The Aurora's embrace glided through the vacuum, its sleek hull gleaming with the pale light of distant stars. Ambassador Mara Locke stood on the observation deck, arms crossed over her chest. As she watched the receding curve of Earth fade into the cosmic tapestry, she inhaled deeply, savoring the recycled air tinged with ozone, an oddly comforting reminder of home. In today's time, she would set foot on Cygnus Prime, the jewel of the frontier and the flashpoint of 1,000 simmering disputes. Mara's mind replayed the final draft of her communiqué, stored safely in the datapad strapped to her wrist. It was the culmination of a year's toil, negotiations with fractious planetary governors, secret meetings with shadowy intermediaries, and countless hours debating the precise phrasing that could both placate the Hawks and Earth's Senate and woo the warlike Grati chieftains. She had argued for balance and amicable withdrawal of hostile fleets, humanitarian corridors for refugees, and a joint scientific council to oversee shared resources in the outer fringe. Yet even she knew how fragile words could be. Twice before, envoys had vanished from allied worlds, snuffed out by miners' guilds resentful of Earth's ecological mandates, or by xenophobic militias terrified of Terran influence. And now, with a clandestine war brewing between the Zeloran merchant houses and the Andari technocrats, the fragile coalition teetered on the brink of collapse. Mara was Earth's final gamble to avert a galaxy-wide conflagration. Her aide, Lieutenant Harunev, approached quietly, boots echoing against polished alloy flooring. "Ambassador," he said, voice low, "we're approaching Cygnus Prime's orbital gate. Docking clearance requested." Mara nodded without taking her eyes from the viewport. "Thank you, Lieutenant." She tapped her data pad. "Initiate. Standard protocol Gamma. Keep all channels open but encrypted. If anything deviates from the scheduled timeline, I want me on comm directly. Understood?" Haru's nod was brisk, military. He activated the ship's systems, and in a hum that seemed to resonate through the deck plates, the Aurora's embrace aligned itself with the massive ring of thrusters. Encircling the station's core, the docking bay of Cygnus Prime Station was a cathedral of machinery. Gargantuan turbine engines lined the curved walls, their throbbing glow pulsing in tandem with the shuttle's approach. Cargo transports and passenger liners drifted in microgravity. Tethered by thick cables to magnetic clamps, Haru guided Mara down the ramp, his grip firm on the strap of her diplomatic satchel, which contained her sealed credentials and the physical copy of Earth's final appeal. A row of Zeloran honor guards awaited them in ceremonial formation. The guards' armor shimmered, with iridescent plating hues shifting between violet and emerald as they moved. Rifles, broke yet elegant, were cradled across their chests, though an envoy's arrival ordinarily warranted a full ceremonial welcome. This display felt hollow. The guards' stances were too rigid, their stares too wary, as if they expected betrayal. "Ambassador Locke," intoned Captain Salira, the station's senior military liaison. Her voice rippled with calm authority. She wore a sari woven from crystalline fibers that caught the bay's light like a star field. "Welcome to Cygnus Prime." "Thank you, Captain," Mara replied, inclining her head. She scanned Salira's face for any trace of duplicity. The Zeloran were masters of subtlety, practitioners of 1,000 unspoken codes. One misstep here, and the fragile piece could shatter instantly. Behind Salira, the grand transit tube, an elongated cylinder of transparent alloy, stretched out toward the council chambers. As they boarded the maglev platform, Mara felt Haru's hand on her shoulder. He lowered his voice. "Sensors detect irregular power fluctuations near the sector junction. I'm dispatching a recon drone to verify. Keep it discreet," she whispered back. "If the council finds out we're scanning their systems, it'll look like an act of aggression." Haru nodded, tapping a sequence on his wristpad. The drone detached from a panel in the ceiling and darted ahead, its form no larger than a squirrel. Cloaked in near invisibility, the Council of 12 convened in the Hall of Echoes, a vast chamber carved into native rock, its walls etched with glyphs depicting the founding treaties of the frontier worlds. A high-arched ceiling soared overhead, studded with prisms that refracted light into dancing fragments across the floor. In the center stood an octagonal dais, its polished obsidian surface reflecting the holographic star map that hovered above. Mara stepped onto the dais. All 12 counselors turned to face her. The Zeloran satrap, clad in flowing robes of midnight blue, raised a slender hand in greeting. The Grati warlord, broad-shouldered and horn-crested, grunted his acknowledgement. The Andari speaker, eyes glittering with calculated curiosity, offered a measured nod. The other 8 represented minor houses and specialist orders, miners, scientists, trade magnates, each with their own stake in the outcome. Mara cleared her throat and touched a palm to the holoprojector's control. The star map shimmered, zooming in on disputed territories where skirmishes had erupted over resource claims. Esteemed council members, she began, voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic enhancers. We stand at a crossroads. Earth does not seek dominion over the frontier, nor do we covet your mineral wealth or strategic outposts. Instead, we propose mutual coexistence, scientific exchange, regulated mining, and above all, enforcement of the peace accords that all of you once endorsed. She paused, scanning their faces. The Zeloran satrap's gleaming eyes betrayed nothing. The Grati warlord's jaw tightened. The Andari speaker, whose species could sense deception through microresonance, seemed unsettled. Mara's implants signaled a faint rise in ambient psionic activity likely transmitted from the Vitari. Delegates, who seated themselves at the chamber's apex, despite their emotion-based speech, their presence was felt as waves of curiosity tinged with dread. Recall, Mara continued, that last month, when the Grati blockade nearly severed supply lines to Cygnus Prime's inner sectors, our fleet intervened only to safeguard civilian transports. We did not assault your outposts or launch missiles against your fortresses, yet the human vessels remain ready to defend legitimate targets. She let the unspoken threat hang in the air. Earth's fleet numbered in the hundreds of warships, with firepower to level asteroids. A murmur rippled through the council. The Zeloran satrap raised a hand for silence. Earth's concerns are known, he acknowledged. But tell us, Ambassador Locke, why should we trust one more assurance when so many promises before have been broken? His tone was polite, but the edge in his voice could cut through steel. Mara held his gaze. Because the alternative is unthinkable. Continued skirmishes will escalate. The Grati will demand reparations. The miners' guilds will fortify every asteroid. And before long, every frontier world will be consumed in a spiral of hostilities that neither Earth nor any coalition can restrain. She took a step back, tapping her pad. The holomap shifted to display the clandestine Weaponan orbital gravitic projector detected by the recon drone in the asteroid cluster beyond Cygnus Prime's Lagrange point. This device can distort spacetime fields, collapsing matter. At will, if activated, it would obliterate the gateway station at Sector 47, triggering a cascade that could reduce entire ecumenopolises to rubble within hours. We believe this weapon is nearing operational status. A sharp intake of breath echoed from the Andari contingent. The Grati lieutenant banged a fist against the dais. If this is true, you must authorize immediate dismantling, he roared. His voice reverberated, betraying raw anger. The Zeloran satrap's eyes flickered. And violate our sovereignty. Shall we also invite Earth troops to seize our planetary defenses? His words were measured, but the implication was clear. Any overt military action would be viewed as an invasion. Mara's pulse quickened. Then allow a joint task force Earth, Zeloran, Grati, Andari, and Vitarian fettered access to the facility. Let us secure the projector together, dismantle its core, and deposit its components in neutral custody. She swept her gaze across the chamber. Let unity, not suspicion, define our actions here. For a heartbeat, the council fell utterly silent. The prisms above cast fractal patterns of light that danced on their upturned faces. Then, without warning, a hiss escaped from the vents. A pale mist flowed into the hall, curling around consoles, and seeped beneath counselors' feet. Within seconds, screams erupted as one by one the delegates collapsed, bodies convulsing, eyes rolling back. Mara barely managed to stabilize herself against the dais. Her throat burned as the mist's chemical signature pricked at her senses, an anesthetic so potent that breath became a battlefield. She fumbled for her comm unit, but her fingers stiffened. All around her, ambassadors fell. Metal tables overturned. The holomap flickered. Outside, alarms screamed aboard the Aurora's embrace. Haru's voice crackled in her ear, distorted by static. Ambassador, we're detecting high concentrations of chloropyrox and neurotoxin. It's fast-acting. You need to get out now. Mara's vision tunneled. She staggered toward the exit, dragging a fallen delegate's lanyard for balance. The world pitched. Somewhere, a crackle of weapon discharges, security detail opening fire into the mist. The air reeked of curdite and fear. She reached the transit tube's entryway and punched the override. The transparent doors slid shut, sealing in the toxin just as her knees gave out. Darkness swallowed her when Mara Locke awoke. The chamber was empty but for her and the echo of her ragged breaths. The holomap hovered, its coordinates blinking red with an incoming transmission request. Earth command, demanding status. Her throat felt raw, mind thick as molasses. She forced herself upward, each movement agony. One thought crystallized, unshakable. The final plea for peace would never be delivered. Instead, the death of Earth's ambassador would be the spark that ignited the stars. And somewhere in the silence, the galaxy waited to see if Earth would answer. Only Commander Jax Varun sat bolt up, right on the bridge of the destroyer Helios, eyes locked on the flickering holoscreen that still carried the final moments of Ambassador Mara Locke's speech. The feed cut abruptly when the astromist swept through the council chamber. No distress beacon, no warning, just static and a single tortured gasp. For a heartbeat, the crew held its breath. Then Lieutenant Sarah Kim's gauntleted hand slammed down on the console. "They've killed her," Sarah whispered, disbelief sharpening her tone into steel. The words struck Jax like a plasma torpedo. He glanced around. Every officer's face was drained of color, the flicker of shock in their eyes reflecting the horror of what they'd witnessed. Earth's envoy, Earth's last chance, had been snuffed out in cold blood, and every code in the Galactic Charter declared this an act of war. The bridge alarm surged to life, red lights strobing in time with the klaxon. Sensors reported a transponder ping from the Andari flagship Iach, a single blast of raw emotion. Broadcast across the psychic net, grief turned to fury. The Vitari delegates' telepathic waves rippled through the Helios neural mesh, translating dread and sorrow into a collective psychic moan. Even hardened officers untrained in Vitari telepathy felt it, a chill that traveled through their sapses. "Status," barked Commander Varun. "We're receiving multiple simultaneous broadcasts," replied Tactical Officer Drax Ul, fingers dancing over the targeting grid. Ziloran merchant guilds, Grati hunting clans, Andari technocrat councils, everyone's uploading data on that toxin, demanding retribution. He shook his head. They're already accusing each other. Jax's jaw clenched. "On my mark. Lock all channels. No comms to coalition partners until we have facts. I want every sensor reading on weapons signature, every intelligence file, cross-referenced for anomalies. We'll find out who's responsible before Earth's fleet moves a single phaser." "Sir," Sarah said softly, "Earth Command's not waiting." The holo viewport behind Jax flared, and the stern visage of Admiral Thornton, Earth's supreme military commander, materialized. His uniform was immaculate, metals glinting under cold white light. "Commander Varun," Thorne intoned, voice like tempered alloy, "confirm the ambassador's status." "Confirmed, sir," Jax answered. "Ambassador Locke is deceased. Circumstances point to a bio-agent assault during her address." Admiral Thorne's expression did not flicker. "The Terran Senate has declared an immediate state of retaliation. Your orders: take the Helios and the Second Fleet to the asteroid cluster, contain and neutralize any hostile assets. Do not await further instruction. The death of an ambassador is a declaration of war in itself." Jax's pulse hammered. He considered protesting to demand a more measured response, to insist on verification, but the Senate's decision was irrevocable. "Aye, sir, we'll depart on your command." "Good. You have 45 minutes to assemble strike packages. I want full recon on that graviton projector. And remember, Commander, Earth's honor is at stake." With that, the feed cut, and the holo viewport winked out, leaving the bridge in muted crimson gloom. 45 minutes later, The bridge hummed with anxious activity. Fighter wings launched in tight V formations. Torpedo tubes bristled. With magnetic mines, E-War specialists keyed amplifiers to jam enemy sensors. Jax walked the deck, pausing at each station, affirming target solutions with the weapon officer, reviewing jump coordinates with the helm, absorbing the cadence of engine thrums that promised swift vengeance. He found Sarah in tactical, scrolling through a flurry of intercepted messages. "They're blaming each other," she muttered. Zeloran nobles claim Gratai extremists slipped the toxin into the ventilation. Gratai factions counter that only the Vitari could have synthesized something this potent. The Andari want trials, but half their scientists are already prepping mass spectrometry to isolate the compound's origin. Jax rubbed his temples. "So we go in with no consensus on culprits. Only conviction that someone crossed a line." Sarah nodded. "And Earth Command's orders are unconditional. Strike first, ask questions later." He let out a slow breath. "Then let's make sure our strike lands on the right targets." He keyed his comlink. "All hands, prepare for FTL run in T-10 minutes. Engineering, take us to warp on my mark." As the Helios shuddered into faster than light, Jax retreated to his ready room. He activated a private channel to General Anaya Desai, Earth's chief intelligence officer. "General," he said, voice low, "I need every bit of intel on the Zeloran Research Directorate's outpost at Gamma 9. Ruins of abandoned mining tunnels. They've been retrofitted into a covert weapons lab." "Understood," Desai replied. "Satellite scans picked up unusual gravimetric readings 2 weeks ago. Could be precursor tests for the projector. I'll forward the dossier." "But Jax," her tone turned grave, "if that's not the site of the attack, striking it could fracture everything beyond repair." He straightened. "Understood. MAAM, send the files." The data stream began to flow, holodata streams dancing across his console. Schematics of tunnel walls rigged with injector ports, schematics of toxin dispersal nozzles, encrypted calm logs implicating a shadow broker known only as the Broker. All pointed toward a single conclusion: a consortium of Zeloran dissidents desperate to spark war. But conviction was not proof. Jax scrolled faster, eyes narrowing on a final piece of evidence: a black market ledger showing large transfers of rare isotopes to a Gratai extremist cell 2 days before Ambassador Locke's arrival. "That's odd," he whispered. "What would the Gratai want with psionic amplifier isotopes, if not to weaponize their Vitari liaison squads?" A soft knock on the doorframe drew his gaze. Lieutenant Harunev entered, eyes troubled. "Commander, Recon drone has returned. An Andari survey drone intercepted. I am uploading its footage now." Jax leaned forward. The new feed showed smoldering wreckage in a side tunnel of the Gamma 9 complex, signs of an explosion, scorch marks consistent with Gratai thermobaric charges. And there, among the wreckage, a Gratai insignia painted hastily on a support beam. "It appears," Haru said, voice low, "that Gratai forces sabotaged the Zeloran facility, perhaps to frame the Zelorans for the toxin attack." Sarah's eyes flared. "That changes things. If the Gratai orchestrated this, then Earth Command's target list needs revising fast." Jax exhaled slowly, mind racing. He keyed his comm. "Admiral Thorne, this is Commander Varan. We've identified Gratai involvement in the Gamma 9 sabotage. Recommend reprioritizing strike packages to include the Gratai archive at Sector 12. The bridge went silent for a long moment. Then Thorne's voice crackled through. "Copy that, Commander. Adjusting targets. Godspeed." An hour later, the Helios took position above Gamma 9, cloaked by a gravity well projector. Through the targeting periscope, Jax watched the abandoned tunnels stretch below like the skeletal fingers of some long-dead giant. He turned to his boarding party, Sarah, Haru, Drax, and a dozen hardened Marines. "Listen up," he said, voice firm. "New intel confirms Gratai sabotage. Our mission: secure the toxin labs, seize the detonator controls, and retrieve any data riffing on the toxin's synthesis. If possible, capture the Gratai cell leader alive for interrogation. Let's not incite more chaos than necessary." Sarah's lip curled into a fierce smile. "Ready when you are, sir." A minute later, Stealth pods detached from the Helios. Belly, Jax watched their tiny arcs as they dove toward the planet. Below, Gamma 9's surface was a wasteland of crystalline slag remnants of the Z-Lauren miners. Work now haunted by smoke plumes and cratered caverns. Inside the tunnel, the lights flickered as Jax's boots crunched over shattered rock. The panel reads indicated trace amounts of chloropyrox, confirmation of the same agent. Used in the Council ambush, they're using identical canisters, Drax reported. Manufactured in the same facility, a distant rumble echoed. Sarah raised a gloved hand. Movement ahead. For Grati troopers, weapons drawn. Jax gave the order. Marines, flank left and right. Sarah, Haru, Drax cover the center. Take them alive if you can. Blue-green plasma bolts lanced through. The dim corridor, the Grati fell back, howling in guttural rage. Jax sprinted forward, clubbing one trooper's rifle aside and grabbing him by the throat. The other crumpled under Haru's stunned baton. Talk, Jax demanded, voice low. The trooper's reptilian eyes widened, uncanny intelligence shining, even as his limbs spasmed under the chokehold. Stop, war, he croaked, gasping. Test, weapon, detonation at Dawn Station. Before Jax could press further, the ground shook violently. A distant explosion thundered. The tunnel entrance collapsed, sealing them in. Damn it, Sarah hissed. Dawn Station is a civilian outpost. If that detonation goes off, it'll vaporize half the population. Jax looked around, only one way out, deeper into the labyrinth, toward the facility's reactor core. We're going in, he ordered. Find that detonator, now. As alarms blared in the distance, the boarding party plunged deeper, torches slicing through choking smoke. Each corridor brought fresh horrors, overturned trolleys, scorched walls, bodies of miners who'd never stood a chance. The air tasted of burnt ozone and something fouler. At last they reached the central control hub, its consoles blinking orange under critical heat warnings. Sarah dove for the main access panel, fingers moving with practiced precision. I've got 60 seconds before the core feedback loop triggers collapse. Jax scanned the readouts. The detonation timer for Dawn Station read T-minus 20 minutes. Override that countdown, Sarah. Now, her eyes were pools of concentration. T-minus 10, 9, 8. The console beeped warnings. Sparks flew as the system attempted to lock her out. 5, 4, 3, done. I've rerouted the signal node. Detonation at Dawn Station. The countdown froze and then cleared. Relief flooded Jax, but it was cut short when the lights died. Emergency glow pods snapped on, bathing the room in red. Turret emplacement on the ceiling. Drax warned, automated defense. He charged his carbine. Jax raised his sidearm. Together they covered Sarah as she extracted a data module. From the console, a cacophony of vibrations shook the structure. Gamma 9 was collapsing. The entire facility had gone into shutdown, fissures racing along the rock face. Time's up. Jax barked, egress route Delta move. They sprinted, through quaking corridors as concrete walls bowed, metal grates twisted. Plumes of dust choked their visors. Behind them, the hub imploded in a wave of blue-white light. Moments later, they burst into daylight or what passed forward in the crystal wasteland. Haru fired up his comlink. Helios, this is Gear Team 1. We have the data module. Repeat. Data secure. Requesting immediate pickup. A shadow passed over them. The Helios stealth pods hovered, cables extending. One by one, the team hooked on and ascended, the wreckage of Gamma 9 collapsing beneath them. Jax clutched the data module to his chest. Below, the tunnel system imploded in a roar that shook the sky. Above them, the Helios slipped away, ghost silent. As it melted into the dark, inside the command deck, Jax placed the module on the analysis station. A holo projector buzzed alive, displaying encrypted files, toxin blueprints, chain of custody logs, audio COMMS implicating a Grati extremist. Council intent on provoking war. The damning evidence lay bare. Sarah turned to him, eyes fierce but uncertain. What now, Commander? He stared at the holomap, where dozens of blinking targets awaited destruction. His voice was calm but carried iron weight. Now we deliver. Justice, but we do it with precision. Only the guilty will burn and we let the innocent live to tell the tale." He paused. "That is how Earth honors its ambassador." And with that, the Helios slipped back into the void, its mission of retribution and reluctant mercy just beginning. The Helios slipped out of warp to light seconds from the asteroid cluster, its darkened hull nearly indistinguishable against the void. Commander Jax Varun stood on the command deck, watching the tactical display as dozens of rocky behemoths drifted in silent formation. Their surfaces were pocked with craters and veins of crystalline or a perfect camouflage. For the graviton projector rumored to lie hidden within, "Deploy stealth drones," Jax ordered. Voice low, "Scan for artificial heat signatures and power conduits. Sarah, Drax, Haru, assemble your team in the launch bay." The three officers saluted and departed. Jax turned back to the viewport, where the cluster spun like a shattered planet. Somewhere beneath those jagged surfaces, the fate of the frontier hung in the balance. 1. The silent approach below decks. Lieutenant Sarah Kim checked her carbines, power cell, and synchronized her ocular implant with the Helios targeting grid. Beside her, Tactical Officer Drax UL calibrated an electromagnetic pulse emitter EMP that could fry the facility's external sensors. Harunev ran a last diagnostic on his recon drone's cloaking field. Their boarding party numbered 14. 6 Marines in powered armor, 2 field medics, a demolitions specialist, and for infiltrators skilled in zero-G maneuvers. None spoke as they suited up. The gravity locks clicked shut, and the pod's hatch sealed with a hiss. Jax entered last, his uniform pressed and spotless despite the tension. He laid a reassuring hand on Sarah's shoulder. "We've trained for this. We go in silent. Strike. Fast. Get out. Ambassador Locke is counting on us to prevent a war. Let's make it count." She offered a tense smile. "Sir." The stealth pods detached from the Helios belly and darted toward the nearest asteroid. In half-gravity they coasted through an asteroid graveyard, weaving between spiny outcrops of black rock. Once in position, the pods activated gecko grip thrusters and anchored themselves to the asteroid's surface, half buried beneath mineral deposits. 2 infiltration boarding party emerged into a narrow service tunnel lit by pale luminescent fungi adapted to the asteroid's microclimate. Sarah flipped on a low wattage torch. Its crimson glow revealed rivets and seams where natural rock had been overlaid with metal plating. "Drax, Empen 3, 2, 1, she whispered. A soft pulse rippled through the corridor. Moments later, the overhead floodlights went dark, replaced by only the faint red of emergency strobes. Heat sensors blinked offline. "Good," Jax murmured. "Advance." They moved in tight formation. Marines at point. Haru launched his micro-drone, which zipped ahead, its optics scanning for life signs and concealed turrets every few meters. The drone's display flickered. No hostiles, no active security systems. But as they turned a corner into a larger chamber, the drone's reading jumped to 9 heat signatures. Jax signaled a halt. Below a metal catwalk, silhouetted against a wall of pulsating coolant veins, stood 9 Zeloran commandos, their rifles trained on the tunnel entrance. "Contact." Sarah hissed. She raised her carbine and squeezed the trigger. A cobalt blue bolt scarred the wall beside the nearest commando's helmet. The Marines erupted into action, plasma bolts and stun grenades lighting the corridor with savage flashes. Jax dropped into a combat roll, sliding beside a bulkhead. He vaulted up, grabbing a commando's rifle and wrenching it free. The Zeloran slammed him with the buttstock, staggering him, but he slammed the assailant into the wall, knocking him unconscious. Drax lobbed an M grenade over the catwalk railing. It detonated in a soft pulse, frying the commando's electronic gear. Their rifles clicked empty, under cover of the Marines' bayonets and stun rods. The boarding party overwhelmed the squad in under 30 seconds. "Area secure," Jax reported. Voice even. "Proceed to Sector Delta 4, 3. Labyrinth of course deeper in the asteroid." The halls narrowed until they resembled natural caverns sculpted by acid rain, and then retrofitted with conduits and control consoles. Pipes vented steam, cables snaked along the walls like vines. The hum of the graviton core faintly thrummed beneath their boots. a heartbeat of destructive power. They reached a junction with 3 corridors labeled A, B, and C on a flickering holographic panel. Haru consulted his wrist pad. Signal. Triangulation suggests the core lies down corridor B, but the toxin storage is in corridor C. Adjacent, we split. Jax considered. I'll take B with Sarah, and 2 Marines neutralize the core. Drax, Haru. Demolitions, and the rest take C. Secure the toxin canisters and plant charges to render them inert. Regroup at the nexus point in 10 minutes. Copy that, Drax replied. Voice already relaying orders. 3.1. The Graviton Corjaxes. Team moved cautiously down corridor B. The hum grew louder until the tunnel opened into a vast chamber. At its center, a spherical lattice of gravitonic emitters floated within a ring of magnetic stabilizers glowing with lethal energy. The walkway around the ring was slick with coolant condensate. Sarah planted magnetic clamps on the stabilizer pylons. Charges set, she called through comm. 10 seconds to detonation. Good, Jax answered. Scanning for hostiles, none appeared, but flickers on the sensors hinted that hidden turrets might still be active. He keyed his comm. EMP secondary. Pulse, with a buzzing thrum. All non-essential electronics powered down. The chamber dimmed, leaving only the core's eerie glow. Sarah triggered the device. Red lights flashed. Countdown 0:06, 0:05. Suddenly, the floor shuddered. A hidden bulkhead slid open, revealing for Zeloran heavy troopers wielding seismic rifles. They fired. Bolts of compressed sound shook the bridge of Jax's eardrums. Fall. Back, Jax shouted, grabbing Sarah's arm. They dove to the side as a pulse ripped through the floor where they had stood. 2 Marines weren't so lucky. Jax hauled one to cover, while the other jerked spasmodically before going still. Sarah wrestled with the detonator override. 5 seconds. 4, 3, her fingers trembled. Jax covered her as energy arcs leapt across the chamber. The charges detonated with a thunderous roar. The gravitonic lattice collapsed in on itself, imploding. A shockwave blew Jax and Sarah against the far wall. The heavy troopers were thrown off their feet as the core's containment field vanished. Smoke and sparks filled the air. As the dust cleared, Jax saw the core's ring deactivated, its power signature disappearing from the tactical display. But alarms blared. The asteroid's structural integrity was compromised. Core neutralized, Jax panted. Get to the nexus now. 3.2. Toxin vault. Meanwhile, in corridor C, Drax's team had breached the toxin vault. Dozens of cryogenic canisters lined the walls, each stamped with warning glyphs. The air smelled of antiseptic, and ozone. Drax connected a nanite drone. Swarm to the main containment field. I'll reprogram the safety should hold them inert for extraction. Haru, plant the charges on the conduit junctions. We blow the vault on the way out. As Haru set the charges, a hidden door hissed open behind them. For masked figures in Andari bio-suits presumably. The original saboteurs emerged, wielding plasma scalpels charged for close quarters. Stay back, Drax warned. He activated the nanite drones. They swarmed the intruders. Jamming their suit actuators, the saboteurs stumbled, their bodies convulsing as the nanites seized control of their exoskeletons. Haru detonated the charges. The vault's outer wall collapsed inward, burying the saboteurs in a cascade of crystal debris. Drax dragged the last canister free, tossing it to the Marines. Let's move. For race to escape Runerdid at the nexus point, an intersection of jagged rock and welded metal. The boarding party found the corridor buckling. Cracks snaked across the floor. Distant rumblings signaled a chain reaction of reactor meltdowns. Jax checked his chrono tracker. T-2 minutes to structural collapse. He pointed to a narrow service hatch marked Egress 17B. This waitable time. They sprinted through twisting tunnels as the asteroid groaned. Sections of ceiling broke free, smashing pathways behind them. Haru's recon drone led the way, its beacon flickering through the dust. Pod Bay is 16 clicks that direction. Sarah shouted over the roar. We won't make it on foot. Jax grabbed the nearest Marine. Use the evac carts. He kicked open a maintenance alcove. Inside stood 3 one-man carts on magnetic rails. He and the others clambered in. A Marine hit the ignition. The Carts rocketed through the tunnel, magnetic clamps magnetizing to the rails. Above them, the asteroid split, chunks of rock tumbling into the abyss. "Hold on," Jax yelled as they careened around a blind corner. The cart flew off the rail, skidding across the rock floor and sending Sarah sprawling. Drax caught her arm, pulling her back into the cart. They reached the bay entrance just as the corridor behind them collapsed in a waterfall of rubble. Outside, two stealth pods hovered, cables dangling. "Dive pod 2, Jax directed. They ejected from the cart and clambered aboard. Haru sealed the hatch with a hiss. They dropped into space, the pod's reaction jets fired, pulling them away from the disintegrating asteroid. Through the viewports, they watched Gamma Cluster fragment into a field of flaming debris. Moments later, the Helios tractor beam latched on, drawing the pod back into the bay. Inside the ship, medics swarmed the wounded while engineers transferred the toxin canisters and core fragments to secure holds. 5. Aftermathjix removed his helmet, breathing the recycled air deeply. His uniform was scorched, armor dented. Sarah's arm was in a sling. Drax had a black eye, and two Marines would need weeks of rehabilitation. Yet they were alive, and they had the evidence. In the infirmary, Haru handed Jax a data crystal extracted from the Toxin Vault's control console. Recorded everything, traces of both Zeloran and Gratai-modified isotopes. Whoever designed this weapon expected both sides to point fingers. Jax nodded, exhaustion and relief warring across his face. "This is our proof. We can stop the Senate's blind wrath from descending on an innocent world." Sarah, leaning on her crutch, offered him a faint smile. "Let's get it to Earth." "Command." Before they dropped the first salvo, Jax placed a firm hand on her shoulder. "One more jump, Lieutenant, then we'll bring them the truth." As the Helios powered for the FTL jump, Jax looked out at the shredded skeletons of the asteroid cluster. Their mission was only half done, but a fragile hope glimmered amid the ruin. In the darkness between the stars, they had found the spark of reason worth saving. The Helios emerged from hyperspace in Earth's orbit, a glittering sphere of cities and oceans beneath them, ringed by orbital platforms and sentinel warships. Commander Jax Varan stood on the bridge, the data crystal in his hand, humming with the weight of truth. Around him, the Second Fleet held position, like vultures waiting for their cue. One returned to Earth atmospheric shuttles ferried the boarding party to the sprawling terraces of the Supreme Council Citadel. Ambassador Locke's flag draped the walls in black and silver, a silent reminder of the cost of failure. Jax, supported by Lieutenant Sarah Kim and Tactical Officer Drax Ul, walked the marble halls to the council chamber, once a forum of deliberation, now a crucible of wrath. Outside, peacekeepers stood guard, their rifles at low port. Citizens gathered beyond the barricades, watching with bated breath as the truth was about to be revealed. News drones circled overhead, their holographic projectors casting the image of the fallen ambassador next to Jax's determined face. 2. The Council of Fury. Inside the chamber, the 12 counselors of Earth sat at a long obsidian table. At the head, Chancellor Wei's eyes were hard as polished onyx. To his right, Supreme Military Commander Thorne's uniform was embroidered with every campaign ribbon in the fleet's history. Opposite them, civil delegates, scientists, trade ministers, and humanitarian liaisons sat in tense silence. Chancellor Wei rapped a silver gavel against the table. "Commander Varan," he intoned, "you have evidence that can sway the fate of billions. Present your findings." Jax stepped forward and inserted the data crystal into the central holoport. A three-dimensional playback flickered to life above the table, scenes from Gamma 9's tunnels, showing Gratai extremists sabotaging Zeloran labs, the Toxin Vault's control logs, audio transmissions in the original Gratai tongue planning the ambush at Cygnus Prime. Gasps echoed around the chamber. One of the civil delegates, Minister Alia Cortez, rose to speak. This exonerates the Zelorans. It implicates the Gratai extremists beyond doubt." Her voice trembled. "We cannot waste another moment." Supreme Commander Thorne's jaw clenched. "Then we strike at their command nexus. We pulverize the extremist cells before they can muster a defense." A murmur of assent rippled through the military delegations. But the humanitarian liaisons protested. "Blunt force will cost countless innocent lives," pleaded Envoy Marcus Fell. "We must consider surgical strikes, extraction of extremists, not carpet bombing entire worlds." Chancellor Wei held up a hand. "Earth will act with precision and justice, but the die is cast. The gates of war have opened." 3. Mobilization and ultimatum within hours. Tens of thousands of vessels, destroyers, frigates, gunboats, and carriers slew from their docks. Weapons crews loaded gravimetric torpedoes, railguns, and plasma lances. The Senate issued a final communique to all coalition worlds. The Grati extremist cells responsible for Ambassador Locke's murder have abrogated every principle of interstellar diplomacy. You have 12 hours to surrender these elements and stand trial under the Council's jurisdiction. Failure to comply will result in targeted military action against all Grati command and logistical structures. No further warnings will be issued. As the ultimatum spread across subspace relays, panic and defiance erupted in every star system. On Zeloran world ships, mercantile families scrambled to shelter civilians. On Andari research stations, scientists prepared contingency vaults. On Grati clan ships, drum beats of war echoed through caverns as horned warriors gleefully sharpened blades. For the first salvo 12 hours later, at 0800 Earth Standard Time, the Helios led the second fleet into orbit above the Grati stronghold of Tikar Prime. Below, the planet's crimson skies were streaked with chemical storms, ominous portents of the conflict to come. "Lock on primary targets," Jax ordered. "Commence orbital bombardment in T-30 seconds." The viewport filled with the mechanical ballet of cannons rotating to aim. A collective hum built to a crescendo. Then, at Jax's command, gravimetric torpedoes detonated in the upper atmosphere, collapsing pockets of air and igniting storm clouds into conflagrations visible from space. Railgun batteries opened up, lancing through the clouds with rivulets of blue-white light. On the planet's surface, cities shuddered. Energy shields flared as they tried to absorb the onslaught. Skeins of falling debris lit up like meteor showers. In the command bunker of the Grati High Council, alarms blared and warriors screamed. Back on the Helios, Jax watched through the tacked glass. "Status report." Lieutenant Sarah's voice was steady. "Primary sites neutralized. Civilian shield arrays holding at 70%. Collateral estimates within acceptable parameters." Jax closed his eyes. "We've given no more warnings." 5. The broadcast of ruin as the barrage continued, Earth's flagship adorned. With Ambassador Locke's standard transmitted a universal broadcast. "They killed our ambassador. Now it's over. No more warnings, only ruin." The message echoed across billions of systems, carried by every ship, station, and terminal. In silent space stations on Norafor, miners wept. In the grand amphitheater of Zeloran's capital, merchants clasped hololiths to their chests. On Grati hunting grounds, warriors roared in righteous fury. The galaxy knew, in one instant, that the price of killing Earth's envoy was devastation without mercy. 6. Aftermath and uncertain future as the Helios and its companion vessels maintained orbit, planetary defenses crumbled. The first phase of the campaign was over, but Jax knew it was only the beginning. He stood beside Sarah at the rail, watching as relief convoys prepared for wounded civilians and reconstruction teams marshaled under Earth's banner. Sarah rested a hand on his arm, her voice soft. "We did what had to be done." Jax turned to her, eyes grim but resolute. "We honored Mara Locke's memory by preventing a galaxy-wide slaughter. But now we must shape this new order from the ashes." Below them, Tikar Prime's skies smoldered. Light years away, other battlefronts flared to life. In every command deck, officers repeated the broadcast's final words as a vow and a warning. Now it's over. No more warnings, only ruin. And in the darkness between the stars, the engines of war roared on, propelled by vengeance, conviction, and the irrevocable certainty that humanity would not kneel.